Hey Joe, it's Folks here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Etsy versus Shopify. On YouTube, about half of the people that are making content recommend Etsy, and the other half are recommending Shopify or some sort of store building platform. And the real problem is that most people getting into print on demand are asking the wrong questions when it comes to trying to figure out which one they should use. People ask things like, is Shopify better than Etsy? Or can you make more money on Shopify versus Etsy? Or even what's best for beginners? And so many more. And honestly, the real question that you should be asking is about strategy. In this video today, I want to break it down and help you to choose which option would be a better fit for you. We will review the strategies that you should use for Etsy and for Shopify. We will break down the pros and cons for each. And ultimately, by the end of the video, I believe you will be able to decide which option is going to be best for you. But before we do that, I just have to say that I am completely and 100% biased in making this video. What I mean by that is I have an opinion. I prefer Shopify. That is where I have made all of my money with print on demand. That is where I teach people to build their print on demand stores. I have a free course linked down in the description to help you actually build a Shopify store. So far, my private coaching students have made about $5 million on Shopify. And ultimately, what I want to try to do in this video is take some of that bias out and present to you the concepts of Shopify versus Etsy in a way that you may not have heard before. But like I said, I also wanted to admit to you before we did that I am completely biased and I do prefer Shopify. If you have watched any of my training before, or even just videos here of mine on YouTube, you have likely heard me talk about various analogies for lots of different concepts. I love analogies because I think they do a great job at explaining what we are trying to understand. And for this concept, before we jump into the strategies of Etsy versus Shopify, I want to give you an analogy. Let's say that you wanted to start cooking and selling food in some way, similar to how you want to start selling print-on-demand products that you are creating. What you might do is go online and look for some advice. And let's say that when you do that, half of the people making videos are recommending you to open yourself a food truck. And then let's say the other half is recommending you to rent out a building and open a restaurant. They would likely all have reasons why their way is better. And ultimately, they'd both likely be right about their opinion with what is better. Meaning, people that are advocating for a food truck likely have good reason to believe that you can be successful with a food truck, and they likely have a lot of advice for you to be able to do that. And the same thing is true with people who are recommending you to open a restaurant. They likely have successful restaurants. They've likely worked with people that have built successful restaurants, and they have good reason to believe that opening a restaurant is a great way to sell food. And this isn't to say that you couldn't utterly fail with both options, meaning you could totally open a food truck and never sell a single item of food and waste all of your time and money on your food truck, while also having the potential to do the same thing with a failing restaurant. And there are definitely some similarities in terms of what success would look like with both options, but for the most part, the strategies involved with running each of those types of food businesses are completely different. Opening a food truck would require constant hustle. You would be consistently evolving your menu to keep up with the seasons or even the crowds that you are serving. Maybe you're going to be basing it off which ingredients you actually have available that day. You would be spending a lot of time researching different festivals that were in your area or even places you could drive and take a trip to. You would likely do a lot of research on which streets would be good for you to actually park on. Some days you could do really well and some days you could do really bad. Maybe no one comes to your food truck or it rains and the festival is canceled. On the flip side, with a restaurant, you have to make a good menu that you basically don't really ever change. But you also do this inside of a building. You have to make your restaurant. And then the goal would be to promote that restaurant to the local community and try to get people to come in regularly when they're looking to dine out. You would also want to make sure that you are able to capture new people as they're moving to the area or even just driving through. Ultimately, though, both are going to require you to create great food and present it well. And hopefully by now you are getting my point with this analogy here. Just like opening a food truck cannot really be compared to opening a restaurant, opening an Etsy shop compared to a Shopify store cannot really be compared either. Both can work, but they are completely different and will require you to do completely different things in order to succeed with them. And for you to ultimately decide which option you want to pursue, 2, you have to thoroughly understand the strategies involved with each of them, just like with opening a food truck or opening a restaurant. And like I told you before, I have made all of my money from print on demand on a Shopify store, but I have also been in this game for a while, and I've talked to a lot of people who have been successful with Etsy. And what I want to do is sort of present to you my understanding of what a successful Etsy strategy would actually look like. First and foremost, you need to choose passionate niches and make designs for them. You would also want to make sure you have a regular upload schedule. This would mean you'd want to be consistent with bringing new products and new designs to your Etsy shop. Most sellers that are on Etsy are creating new designs daily. They are focusing heavily on trends such as holidays or the time of year. And basically, at one point in a year, your product line could look completely different than it does at another time. And basically, success looks like having a large product catalog that is consistently evolving, and the goal would be to get a smaller percentage of those designs to sell on a regular basis. Take a look at this store here. They have been on Etsy since September 12th. Looks like they've got 869 designs, and as we scroll through their stuff, we will likely see lots of different trending types of designs. They're basically selling to a wide variety of niches. They've got 25 pages at least of designs on here, and their goal with this is to continue to grow. If your goal is to open an Etsy store, you would sort of want to emulate this, where your goal should be to very quickly, or as quickly as possible, try to get to that many designs. So that way you can sort of compete with them. Ultimately, the name of the game on Etsy is trying to create as many things as possible so that way you can remain relevant. One of the biggest things that you need to do to succeed with Etsy is to actually show up in people's search. Etsy is a search-based platform, which means your customers are going on there and they're typing something in, and if your stuff is not showing up like on the first page, then you're going to have a tough time actually making sales. And for that reason, it's going to be important for you to upload consistently and to just constantly try and reinvent what it is you're doing. And with Shopify, the strategy would first be you basically creating some sort of a brand within a niche or based on a specific product type. You would then want to create a streamlined product line, basically choose like 1 to 3 different product types and begin making some designs for them. And then your time would be spent using social media marketing to grow a following, establish your brand, and ultimately make sales. Sort of something like this website here. I actually reviewed this store in a recent video here on the channel. If we scroll through, you can see they basically do like personalized rugs and canvases for the walls, as well as some different t-shirts and things like that. And they do have a decent amount of sales. This is a relatively new store, and they have about 400 reviews on the store, so that means that they likely have way more sales than that because not everybody is actually leaving reviews. And they are, basically using this social media page here to grow and establish their brand. And, this store is also running ads on social media, which I did review in the other video that I referenced earlier. But basically what they've done here is they've carved out a little space for themselves on their own site to sell their products. So ultimately, if you think back to the analogy I gave you, Etsy is the food truck, and opening a Shopify store for your print-on-demand business is opening a restaurant. Both can work, but they're going to require basically completely different strategies. And in order for you to actually make a decision on which route you want to go, I think that's an important thing to realize. And if you truly understand the analogy, you will understand that the positive things about food trucks are actually the negative things about having a restaurant. And the same thing is true about Etsy and Shopify. The positive things about Etsy are the negative things about Shopify, and vice versa, right? The positive things about having a restaurant are the negative things about having a food truck. The same thing is true here with Shopify and Etsy. The positive things about Shopify are the negative things about Etsy. And what I sort of want to do is break this down, because based on those pros and cons, you are going to ultimately choose which route you want to take. Now, obviously, one of the major pros with Etsy is that you can just use Etsy. You don't need to build a store. If this was a food truck, you don't need to actually open a restaurant. You just get your truck and you drive. With Etsy, you also don't need to really have a marketing budget. You're not, paying influencers, you're not running ads or anything like that. And obviously, the con with an Etsy shop is that your time is for the most part spent just continuously making new designs and growing your product catalog to hundreds or if not thousands of designs in order to keep up with the trends and compete with everybody everybody else on the platform. And to me, that is a major con. Competing with everybody else when there could be hundreds of thousands of other people that are doing something very similar to you is not a great way to run a business. And I don't mean to bring too much of my personal opinion into this, but I do believe that is a major con of an Etsy shop. Oftentimes, people are just not going to see your stuff. You're going to not show up in search results because there are so many other people out there doing the same thing. There's also a major issue with Etsy fees. Now, again, I haven't sold on Etsy, but I have seen countless people talk about the Etsy fees. I run a print-on-demand Facebook group that has 70,000 people inside of it, and I see people almost on a daily basis talk about the problem with Etsy fees taking up almost all of their profit. I've also seen people make posts about Etsy randomly shutting down stores. Sometimes it's a mistake and they turn them back on, but sometimes they don't. And to me, that is a major con. Essentially, when we look at this, we can assume that the pros, just like with a food truck, is that you just need to start cooking the food, right? When you have a food truck, you show up at a festival and everybody's looking to buy food. The same thing is true on Etsy. You open your Etsy shop and people are there, they're searching for things and they're going to potentially find your stuff. The major con, though, is that there's so many other food trucks at the festival, and sometimes no one will even come to your food truck. Your time is basically going to be spent creating lots of different designs. Essentially, what I'm saying to you is if you're comfortable with the idea of someday creating hundreds of designs, then maybe Etsy isn't a bad idea for you. If you're comfortable with continuously doing this and basically never stopping the design creation process, then maybe Etsy would be good for you. Now, on the flip side, with Shopify, one of the major pros is that you don't need to have a massive product catalog. Just like when you're opening a restaurant, you can have a menu that basically never changes. Of course, you can have specials and different seasonal things on there, but for the most part, your menu is your menu. You can also build your store the way that you want it. You now have the ability, because you're off of Etsy, to design your store the way that you want it. Everything from the colors of the site to the imagery that's there, and you're not just another Etsy seller. You are creating your own space. And to me, that's a major plus. That is not a negative. Earlier, I talked about how some of the negative things about Etsy are the positives with Shopify. And to me, that is a major positive, right? One of the things about Etsy that people like is that they don't have to build a store. However, I think that's a great thing about Shopify. Even though it's more work, I think it's fun. I think it's awesome, and I think it gives us a great way to create an awesome space for our products. With a Shopify site, you also make all the rules. You set all the policies. You're not at the mercy of bad reviews that you could potentially get. With a Shopify site, you also set all of the policies. You make the rules. It's your store, and you're not at the mercy of potentially getting a bad review from a disgruntled customer who didn't understand what it was they were ordering from you. What I mean by that is sometimes I see people talk about how they got a 3-star review from a customer who didn't like the quality of the item they were ordering when there was really nothing wrong with it. They were just dealing with a difficult customer. Bad reviews on an Etsy shop can really hurt. Obviously, a con with Shopify is that you're spending time on marketing. Now, to me, I think this is a positive. Most people out there, when they list pros and cons, view this as a negative thing, and that's why I have this in the negative or the con category. But to me, this is great. I think that running social media campaigns and using the power of social media to actually make your sales is an amazing thing. When it comes to Shopify, you also need to pay for the Shopify and for a domain name. And yes, that is an out-of-pocket expense compared to Etsy, which is free. But honestly, if you're starting a business, you shouldn't expect to be doing this for free. And if a small fee like a domain name or Shopify is going to break your budget, then maybe a business isn't a great thing for you to start right now. So like I said, Etsy is the food truck here and Shopify is the restaurant. With Etsy, you're taking your food truck to the festival and then you're hoping that people come up to your food truck. And with Shopify, you are opening a restaurant and you're trying to get people in the community to come to your restaurant on a regular basis. You're growing a following in the community and ultimately you're going to have your own space to do it all in. And for me, that is what I would rather do. I would much rather choose some niches and products and build a nice store around them than just become another Etsy shop. At this point, there are millions of other Etsy accounts out there. In most cases, whatever niches or products you're looking to sell, there are going to be pages and pages and pages and hundreds of thousands of listings that are very similar to yours, and I just don't want to compete with that. I don't want to have to rely on making new designs and consistently updating my product catalog. I definitely don't want to get to the point where I'm running a store that has 1,000 designs on it or something like that. And like I said, I don't want to take part in something that has hundreds of thousands of others that are basically doing something similar to what I'm doing. I want to offer unique designs to my people that I am cultivating and that I am growing. I want to run a social media profile that is all about my niche. I want to grow a following. I want to feel like I actually have a brand rather than just another Etsy shop with a whole bunch of stuff that other people are selling as well. Honestly, social media is the fun part for me. And like I said, for you at this point, ultimately, the question should not be, is Shopify or Etsy better? The question should be, is the strategy for Shopify or Etsy better for you? Etsy is going to be you basically running a food truck and consistently creating tons and tons and tons of new designs to sell, so that way you can outpace some of the other sellers there. And if you want to do that, that's fine. I'm sure that you could make some sales. It's just going to require you to create lots and lots of designs and also put in a lot of time, so that way you can start getting your stuff to show up on the first page of Etsy. With Shopify, the strategy is really to basically start your own thing, to choose a niche and some products and begin building out your own shop, and then take it to social media. And if you have good stuff, your social media profiles will grow and you will be able to establish your brand and your following. To me, that is a much simpler approach, and it's the one that I have had the most luck with. It's also the one that I teach about. Like I said at the beginning of this video, if you want to go through my course, it is completely free. It will guide you through the entire process to actually open up a print-on-demand store on Shopify. This is the way that I believe going into the future is going to ultimately outlast running an Etsy shop, because Etsy is just getting more and more popular as time goes on. But we'll see. I've been asked this question a lot lately, and I wanted to make a cohesive video here. I've definitely talked about this on the channel before, but perhaps not in this way. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Am I absolutely out of my mind with my analogies, or am I making sense? And let me know ultimately which option you think would be better for you, because I honestly don't think they can be compared. I think they're two completely different strategies, and ultimately I think based on those two strategies, you have to pick which one is going to be better for you. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.